So I was going to make a video going over my favourite books from all sorts of genres, and I just would choose one book from each of the traditional genres. But that was far too hard to pick just one book from each genre. So I'm doing something a bit different, although probably someone has done it before, in that I'm going to make a series of videos where I'm picking one genre in each video, but then within that is all the kind of subgenres and sub-styles that you can find within the more broader definitions of a genre. I wanted to make this series because I realised, although you've seen my opinions and tastes in particular titles, you probably don't have a very broad overall view of my tastes and whether they align with yours or not. So this episode is focusing on science fiction. I've chosen some subcategories and I hope to keep them consistent across all the different genre videos, but I'm not guaranteeing it because some of them might be a bit niche, but basically we'll just see how I get on. I haven't planned any of the other videos. So let's start off with some classic, basic standalones. Favourite sci-fi standalone novel is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I mean, this is a well-beloved book. I don't think I need to pitch it to you, but it's chosen as my favourite for a couple of small reasons. One, it makes me feel smart that I understand the science because it's explained so well. There's a completely freaking adorable character in here, so of course that makes everyone love the book even more. It's a kind of classic adventure story, but also high stakes, lovable characters, kind of trying to save everything, and I think well written. So, favourite novel. Favourite novella, standalone novella, is Walking to Aldebaran by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's just a little novella about a crew on a spaceship going to explore, I don't know if you can see it very well, but this phenomenon that's turned up. And essentially what this is like a gate to a series of underpasses that connect star systems. But there's a variety of different environments within this sort of underpass system, and that means that you can't take spaceships or really any kind of craft through the system. You have to go on foot, hence walking to Aldebaran. And then our main character has all sorts of strange things happen to him as he goes through the system, seeking out the different destinations, seeing where it leads to, what kind of environments there are, who he meets along the way. And the only advice I would give before reading this is to read Beowulf first of all. But I can't tell you why, just do it. Then moving on from standalones, let's go to series. So my favourite sci-fi series, which is all novels, is the Wayfarer series. The first book is called The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and it's by Becky Chambers. This is a particularly hefty edition because it's from Folio Society, so don't expect this to be what you see online when you Google it. So this book, the first book in the series, is a journey story, and it's about a group of misfits coming together and having to take a long spaceship journey in order to build a gate to like connect an outlying planet to the main central system. So there's found family themes, there's lots of mini stories within an overall story arc, depending on like the various pit stops and destinations they go to on the way. And then the backstory for each character is also its own little mini story. But this kicks off the series, which focuses on a different member of the crew from this spaceship in each book, I believe. I've only read the first 2 or 3, so maybe I shouldn't be recommending a series that I haven't completely finished. But yeah, I love a found family story, and this is very much also classified as cozy sci-fi, but I have a different recommendation for my cozy subgenre. And then naturally leading on from that, so my favourite science fiction novella series is The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. Starting with the first book, All Systems Red. This was originally going to be a trilogy, I believe, which is why I've classified it as a novella series, even though there are now novels, but they came later on. This follows someone who's essentially kind of a cyborg, mostly robot, some organic parts, and their job is kind of private security. not in the sense of like a personal protection bodyguard kind of level, more in the sense of providing security and guard duty for groups of people. They started off in kind of like mining establishments, basically. In this story, they have been contracted to guard and look after a group of scientists who are exploring a planet and doing like investigations into the geology and biology of this planet. And in the process of this investigation, it turns out that not everything is above board, and so the security unit has to step in to ensure that their clients don't die, basically. And as the story unfolds, it's revealed that the sec unit is not as much under control of their owners as they're supposed to be. They're supposed to have a piece of hardware and software in their heads, which basically means they can't be independent and do their own thing and have their own thoughts. Their whole personality and mind is under lockdown. But it's revealed that this particular security unit has broken the controls on their government unit and so has free will. And that gets them into trouble and events unfold from there. Then next I thought I'd highlight is my favourite short story collection. Actually, two answers to this if I'm honest. How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin and Night Flyers and Other Stories by George R.R. Martin. However, since I am going to try and make myself choose just definitely one for each subsection, I am going to choose Night Flyers just because there are stories in here which I kept thinking about for years after I'd read the book. It's hard to describe a short story collection because they're all quite different, but the ones that stuck with me in particular were A Song for Lyre and Weekend in a War Zone and Night Flyers, which is half the stories in here. Then let's go into a random collection of subgenres in no particular order. So, favourite cozy sci-fi, shall we say, is A Psalm for the Wild-Built, also by Becky Chambers. This is about a world, or a moon I think, where robots became sentient, took themselves off away from human society into the wilds, did their own thing. Humans then developed a society separate, and it has these cozy, wholesome vibes because it's very much based around an environmentally sustainable, wholesome kind of society. Our main character is a tea monk, which gives you an idea of the kind of vibes of this. And things kick off when a single robot comes back from the wilds, encountering our tea monk, and they go off on a journey together. Next up, I will go with favourite sci-fi classic, which is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is technically part of a larger overarching series called the Hainish Cycle, but each book can be read as a standalone. I think I've read 3 of them. There's kind of vague connections a bit about like the backstory of the whole society and some technology that crosses over from book to book, but each book is generally a standalone. You don't have to know anything else about the others. So this book is about basically an ambassador who's coming from a central, powerful society, and he's going to a planet which has already been assessed about whether it can be included in this broader society, and it's decided that this planet can join, and so the ambassador goes down to basically start the process of signing the planet up. And the thing that makes this planet of people very different to everybody else in the Hainish culture is that they can change gender, and so that has a variety of knock-on consequences for the culture on the planet, but also the experience that our kind of ambassador character goes through, particularly when he ends up stranded with one of the locals in an extremely harsh environment. So there's a bit of a survival storyline going on as well. Then I've got a weirdly specific subgenre, which is books that focus on non-humans. But I'm going to say favourite sci-fi with non-humans as the main characters is Dogs of War, also by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is again kind of taking the cyborg route of sci-fi, but instead of human-machine hybrids, it's animals and machines. This is, I believe, the first book in what's just a duology, and it focuses on a squad of animals who have been engineered and built to be basically super soldiers, but it's different animals in the squad. So there's the dog who leads them, a bear, a lizard, and some bees. And so each of those animals has been adjusted and built in a way to like work together as a unit, and each bring like a unique aspect, so they can work together for not the most honourable reasons. But when communications are cut and Rex has to start making his own decisions and judgments with the help or the hindrance of some of his teammates, then things take a turn. Next up, subcategory wise, is multimedia. So my favourite science fiction multimedia story is the Illuminae files. This is actually a YA, so an unusual choice for me, but it is incredibly multimedia. So this is the first in a trilogy set within a world where humans are on other planets and also space stations, and there's AI and there's biological warfare problems, and there's mega corporations who are treated almost like nation states. And the reason this is presented multimedia is that overall this is essentially a case file of evidence that has been collected across this book and the other two about the goings on in this society and the bad things that are happening. So it's things like transcripts and emails and audio recordings that have been written down, and diary entries and lab reports, and the AI recording itself, and paperwork. Then of course I read quite a few graphic novels, so favourite science fiction graphic novel is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. I'll show you some of the lovely art inside. Hopefully there's no spoilers. One storyline is about two girls at a boarding school and their relationship, and the other storyline is about kind of for-profit archaeologists, is how I describe it. From what I remember, they travel to broken structures, buildings that in outer space, and are rebuilding them and restoring them and making them a bit safer. And then those two storylines weave together eventually. Then, as you may or may not know, I'm also doing a kind of read the world challenge where I want to read a book from every country in the world. So this isn't really a subgenre, it's just like a subset of my own book collection where I keep all the books from around the world. So my favourite science fiction book from that Read the World challenge is The Gurkha and the Lord of Tuesday by Saad Z. Hussein. So this is set in Kathmandu in a future where AIs control like quite powerful city-states, and these AIs are called karma, and there's all sorts of like biological controls and systems, and it's quite utopian. However, our main characters in this particular story are a genie and an old soldier who both start off outside of Kathmandu and make their way inside. Basically, the genie wants to reclaim his former power, and the Gurkha is on a vendetta, and so they work together to try and make things the way they want it to be. It's been a while since I've read this. I seem to remember there's also like a police investigator storyline, and it's got this thing I really like where whenever there's an AI character, and this applies to Illuminae as well, they do things which humans might consider wrong or immoral, but to the AI they're always taking the path that is best for the most humans, and so you don't agree with them from like a gut instinct point of view, but because the AI is so rational and so dispassionate, they can always justify their actions. Then I want to end with what I consider books that cross over genres. So let's go with fantasy first. So my favourite sci-fi fantasy is the Locked Tomb series, starting with Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This very much presents itself as a fantasy series first because it involves necromancy. But as you get further into the series, we've had 3 books released so far. You realise actually it does have sci-fi kind of bones or at the root of it. Bones, haha. Pun not intended, but very good, I think. The author is a Kiwi, and a lot of the backstory is set in New Zealand, which, you know, gives it an extra bonus point. But even before that, when you're just in the midst of full-on fantasy and stuff on alien planets, the humour and the characterizations are the strongest point of these books, and yeah, the personalities of all the characters involved, and it's quite a complex, elaborate story. It'll be interesting to see how it all comes together, because it's quite hard to keep track of it all in your head, but it's a wonderful series. Great for fans of sci-fi or fantasy. Then next on the pile, not a genre I really consider something I read very often, but it does sometimes cross over with sci-fi, which is westerns. So favourite sci-fi western is Frontier by Grace Curtis. So this follows the exploits of a woman who crash landed in a escape pod on Earth long after Earth was evacuated and had succumbed to climate collapse, and the people left on it are scrabbling in kind of a Mad Max kind of society, and she has to make her way across the barren landscape full of lawlessness, as is typical in a western, to find her love. So it could also be considered a romance. And then finally, I saved this one to last because it might be a bit of a spoiler that it's part sci-fi. So, you know, I read a lot of kind of murder mysteries and crime fiction, and so favourite sci-fi crime crossover is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. So it's, I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, because it's a time loop story, and there's only a couple of reasons you ever end up with time loops. In this case, it's a science fiction-y reason. So it's overall about a big party that's happening in a grand house, and it's the same night replayed again and again, because at the end of the night, Evelyn Hardcastle ends up murdered. So it is a murder mystery whodunit, but our detective is having a Groundhog Day experience, waking up in a different body each time round. So they're seeing the situation from a different viewpoint. So it's an unusual murder mystery. I really like time loop stories. So this ticked several of my boxes. So that's it. I think that was all the subgenres and substyles I could think of. But that gives you, I think, a good broad overall idea of what my favourite science fiction books are. There are a bunch of others I could have included, like I could have included the Expanse series or the culture novels. The problem with sci-fi is they are so often a series of novels, so there's too many for that particular category. So I was thinking, if you take all my favourite science fiction as a whole, can you draw any kind of conclusions about the themes or tropes or styles that I favour, and will those be translatable across to other genres, which we'll find out later, I guess. And I've made some notes having a think over it, and I think the kind of main themes that are running across multiple of these titles is ideas around the exploration of what it means to be human, particularly present in stories involving cyborgs, animals and AI. Also found family themes, cozy settings and all characters, and then humour is also important, and very present in sci-fi in particular is themes around exploration and survival. And sometimes that can be survival in space, and sometimes it can be survival on a planet, or sometimes it can be just survival of the situation you're in. I think that's a pretty good summary of like what I would enjoy in a book. So keep watching to see future episodes where I look at different genres and try and keep roughly the same categories across the genres. There'll be some differences, but that's inevitable. And then I guess we'll see if the themes that I enjoy carry across all genres, or just for those are just for science fiction. Thanks for watching. I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a like or hit the subscribe button for my channel. The YouTube statistics tell me that mostly my videos are watched by non-subscribers, but it'd be lovely if you decided to hang around and we could chat about books. But yeah, have a nice rest of the day.